What's the number one challenge for businesses today?
Workforce development, attracting, recruiting, and retaining people.
And that's why we created this podcast, designed for the frustrated CEO, the under-resourced recruiter, or the overworked manager, to give you the tools to tackle those WTF moments.
It's time to open another workforce therapy file.
Welcome back to the Workforce Therapy Files. We have a guest with us today, and I am excited to introduce to our listeners Miss Summer Goldman. Hi, Summer.
Hello, Jamie.
How are you doing today?
Very good. Happy to be here.
Yeah. I have had the honor of knowing you now for 11 years.
Probably.
12 years.
A bazillion.
Yes.
A lot of life in those 11 years.
A lot of life. And there is a fun fact that I learned from Summer that I'm going to share with Jason and Molly today that Summer does not know that I'm going to bring up. But when I tell you that I've learned so much from this woman that have nothing to do with what our podcast is about. But today I'm going to tell you that if you plant tomatoes next to a spicy pepper, you could end up with spicy tomatoes. Mm-hmm. Is that facts? Did I make up that fact?
You made that up.
You didn't tell me that?
Cucumbers and watermelon, though, well, that's true. They will take on each other's if you plant them.
She was trying to explain to me GMOs. We had a whole conversation about this. I know I didn't make this up fully. I'm not that creative.
I don't know. I don't think you made it up. I think maybe...
I embellished?
You either embellished or maybe didn't remember it correctly.
You can plant spicy peppers.
I have a question. Was tequila involved?
No.
Oh, well.
No, that's not that's not how we've bonded.
I can't save
typically.
you from this.
Yeah. Okay. Well, welcome to the Workforce Therapy Files, where we are just spitting
facts go out the window.
Spitting facts. Summer, so I also know that you had a corporate career. So tell us a little bit about your background.
Yeah, absolutely. So I had a 20-year corporate career. My background is in agriculture, so you weren't completely far off with us discussing plants.
It was food science, right?
Yeah, we can talk about that. Yeah, so my background's in agriculture and lending. And 15 of that was in leadership, leading sales and operations teams, and really learned that I prefer to build new things, get it to about 80%, and then have someone come in and really kind of finish it. And so I had the opportunity to do that several times. Very rewarding.
Yeah. And then, like so many of us, you made the decision to go out on your own.
I did.
How did you know what you wanted to do?
So most of the wonderful things in my life it felt like very much like they just happened. And this is no different. I had left the corporate space and was thinking about what my next move was and was having a hard time making the decision to go back into another corporate space. And so one day I sat down and wrote a list of the things I'm good at and the things I enjoy doing, because those two things are not always the same. And it looked an awful lot like a business plan. And if there had ever been an opportunity in my life to try it, that was it. Yeah. And so I did, and I have not looked back.
Absolutely. Yeah. You're kind of a master connector.
I am.
Yeah. And so watching you build your business has been really fun. Yeah. But you don't, tell us what you're doing now, though. So Dixon Strategies is the name of your company.
Yes.
And tell us what types of services Dixon Strategies offers.
Absolutely. So there's a couple things. So fractional chief operating officer services. And that looks different for different businesses. I've fully focused on startup, small business, family-run businesses. And so it looks different depending on the maturity of the company or the size of the company, from serving as the chief operating officer to consulting in the background with their existing operations folks. And then I also have a Vistage practice. And again, same theme. It's businesses in that same kind of realm that's very entrepreneurial. And so just serve as a facilitator for their peer advisory and a coach to them.
For those that are unfamiliar with Vistage, tell us what Vistage does.
Yes. Vistage is a peer advisory organization. It's the largest actual CEO coaching and peer advisory group in the world. Even in Louisville, we have about 400 members. Several different chairs.
I don't think I realized how big that was.
Yeah, it's very big. As of this day, I'm the only one with an entrepreneurial group. But it's pretty powerful. Folks tend to stay in it 7 years on average. And so there's a lot of benefit, because being a CEO is pretty lonely. If you don't have people around you to bounce ideas off of and to sometimes just say this stinks. And so it provides that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So when we got together originally, we put together workforce therapy files to solve to provide workforce solutions, to solve workforce problems. This season, we've been focusing very heavily on the future of work. What are some of the themes that you're starting to see emerge, either with your clients or in your experience, that you see people needing help solving? What kind of problems do you see?
So one of the problems is the location of the workforce. So I happen to do some work in the manufacturing side. And this particular type of advanced manufacturing business is pretty geographically intense. Like it's in very specific pockets throughout our state of Kentucky.
Yeah.
And so the competition for talent is pretty intense.
Yeah.
But we know that we have workforce in other parts of the state that very well they definitely have transferable skills. And so at some point, we're going to have to figure that out. Like we're going to have to figure out how to do some things like locally distributed. I'm kind of lucky I get to do some work in that space, but that's one. The generational piece, which is interesting to talk about because I feel like in my 20 some odd bazillion years of working, we've been talking about generational changes and differences. That's still a thing. It's still, there's different needs and desires based on the generation. They don't always understand each other. So continuing to have those conversations, I think, is going to be something that we'll do into the future. And then being clear with folks on expectations. So I feel like nothing I'm saying is very radical or
I don't think it has to be.
Different. Yeah, it just is, right? It just is. And it's things I think that we've always found ourselves challenged with. It's just now, for example, we have ChatGPT, right? we have AI. We have, the ability to run a robot halfway across the country. So there's different tools that we have access to solve some of these challenges. But I don't know that the challenges are all that different 10 years from now as they are 10 years ago.
I think your point earlier about the geographic location, especially in Kentucky as a market of the workforce, has been a particular challenge for some of the growing markets. I live in Bowling Green, and Bowling Green is exploding, especially with manufacturing, and over the past 5 years or so. And, the community has had, honestly, we've done some really innovative things that the world just doesn't know about, but we have brought so much there, and we have the reason our community is the fastest growing in the state and one of the fastest growing in the country is because we have hit that workforce issue head on and said, well, we're going to work around it. My company does some work in that space, recruiting people, recruiting talent, not only from other communities far and wide, but just from those rural communities around, which have higher unemployment rates. There just aren't the opportunities there. So what are some solutions you see? That's what I see in my little world. What are some solutions you're seeing to some of those displacement or misplacement of workforce issues?
So a couple things, like you've actually hit on one, is making sure that folks understand the industry that's available to them within a certain geographical area. And that's going to have to happen more and more because there are some industries that just aren't sexy. But they aren't they're more desirable than people realize they are. So having like that branding and that sharing the story of what working in that industry is like is going to be important. But we're going to have to meet people where they are. And I mean that in a lot of ways. I mean that physically, geographically where they are. I also believe that it is, where they are as far as their skill set, where they are with their own goals in their life. Like there's just having a good blend and balance of business needs and personal needs. That's going to solve a lot of this.
Yeah. Do you think there's a skills gap with some of those workforce, the workforce that is migrating or moving around to adjust to where they need to be for the work? Are they having to adjust their skills as well? For instance, like agricultural, people with agricultural backgrounds moving into manufacturing, that's very different. It's physical labor, but it's a very different thing. Is that culturally, do you see that challenge happening out there?
So it depends on what we're talking about, right? Like it depends on whether we're talking about service or widget or what we're talking about. But when you look in the advanced manufacturing space specifically, there are a lot of jobs that we've lost. So think coal industry, okay? So there's a lot of jobs that we lost that those skills are way more applicable in advanced manufacturing than people realize, even with the agriculture. So it depends on what part of agriculture, right? Like I've always been in sales, or like years ago I was in sales. No, that's not going to work. But if you've been involved in diesel mechanics, if you've been working on equipment, if you've been working on, in production, in livestock or crop production, you've probably got quite a few skills that are applicable, because you think about the efficiencies that you need with advanced manufacturing. You think about, you got to follow the safety standards. You've got to understand how equipment works at its base. There's quite a few of those skills that are applicable to that.
It's interesting that you say that, because last season we did an episode about how to plan to recruit. And one of the things that we identified was not being as rigid about who it is that you go and put your opportunity in front of, because there's a lot of people that have transferable skills that might be a fantastic fit. So I think that's great. I keep referencing back to our earlier seasons, because there's some individuals that are new to Workforce Therapy Files, and I think there's a lot of great content that we covered last season.
Yeah, actually, I know what episode you're talking about. That was actually, I think, one of your better episodes, because you really got into the non-traditional workforce, right?
Absolutely.
And so it's not that creative to think of someone that had worked in the coal industry can go fabricate metal, right? It's not that, but when you start thinking about an immigrant population, or, we've got a great resource with veterans, in two parts of our state, right? Like when you start thinking about like the non-traditional workforces that are there's a lot of skill.
Absolutely.
There's a lot of skill, and that we need to understand.
I think that's one of the greatest challenges across the board. And as we continue to evolve, and with robots and AI, and jobs are going to become obsolete because of technology, but at the same time, the transferable skills that individuals have, or scaling up, and how they can better themselves, it's educating them. So one of the things that we're working on through technology is, if someone applies for, if they put in their profile that their knowledge, skills, and abilities fits that of a welder, through the system and the technology, it will match you with jobs that have like skill sets. So you don't necessarily have to apply for a welding job. The technology, the software will show you job opportunities that have matching skill sets. So just to your point of what are some other things that this person could do with these knowledge, skills, and abilities that they could also be successful in another career.
That's very cool.
Yeah,
absolutely.
That's super cool, Molly.
Thanks.
I don't think I realized that y'all were doing that.
Yeah.
Yeah, very good. Now we all learned that.
Check.
Right.
I knew that, actually.
You did know that?
I did know that.
Yeah. That's good. Way to pay attention.
Well, you work with leaders a lot. What are some other things leaders need to be thinking about around workforce that maybe you see, or you just in general have seen they're not quite thinking about yet, or you or others bring to their attention? I see some things, but I just wonder if those align, because I think that leadership is often focused on growth. They're focused on numbers or what the shareholders are looking at. And increasingly, workforce needs to be one of those top 2 or 3 things they're thinking about. Whereas before it was, my team's got it. I don't have to think about that. So what are some of those things that you think are sort of maybe gotchas, or things that are coming up or changing and evolving that they need to be addressing?
Yeah. So keep in mind, I work a lot in the entrepreneurial space, right? So we're not worried about shareholders yet.
Right.
Not quite yet. So one of the conversations that has come up several times in several different ways, really over the last month, I actually find myself driving and thinking about it, is at the root of the conversation is an owner, founder, whatever, right? They have ownership of the business. They don't understand why their team isn't as passionate about the business as they are, right? And in a lot of ways, I completely understand that. And so what the conversation ends up being is, well, they're not going to be. This isn't the baby they birthed. This isn't, they don't have their life savings invested in this business, no one's going to be as passionate about this business as you are. But what you can create is a culture that has people that are passionate about you. Especially in the entrepreneurial space, right? When you're still the founder, still the brand, right? You can create a culture where they're passionate about coming to work there. They're passionate about your leadership style. Mm-hmm. They're passionate about, just how they feel about whatever it is, whatever the work that's done. So I can find myself driving on that. I don't have a solution to that yet, but it's a conversation that we have. What I have found, and that makes me incredibly happy, for lack of a better word, is there are very few leaders, like the 0.1%, that when you scratch the surface, that they don't love the people that work for them. I mean, they care about the people. Sometimes they get caught up in the whirlwind of growth, revenue, mad customer, poor supplier. They get caught up in that whirlwind, and sometimes they just have to be reminded that you love your people, and it brings them right back to center. So I get to work with cool people though. So
yeah. Well, I mean, I can see that in my daily life, running a small business. The problems that I think are honestly easier to solve are those revenue problems, or those fixing a thing for a client, or bringing in a new service line. Those seem to figure themselves out. Mm-hmm. For me, the thing that keeps me awake is 20 plus people and their families are dependent on me making good decisions. Molly and I've talked about this before. And so I think as entrepreneurs and young companies look at workforce, I think they have to think about it in a responsible way. Like these aren't units of work that you're managing. These are people and their families, and you're developing their careers. And we all fall short of that, I'm sure regularly. But if that's the North Star, if that can be a North Star, man, how powerful could that be? And what kind of organization can you build? Mm-hmm. Who cares about how much money you make? But if you've created all this, equity with your team, they're going to drive that revenue for you. You don't have to do it anymore at some point.
Yeah, absolutely.
Seems like.
Yeah. And sorry, Jamie.
No, please.
Well, that sense of feeling responsible for folks is common with the people that I work with, right? Mm-hmm. With the group of leaders that I work with, that feeling super responsible. And I haven't figured this out yet, and maybe you as the branding guy can figure this out. How do you take that? Because if I knew that someone cared about me that much, or if I could tell the story about how much this business owner cares about people that work there, I would want to go work there. Like, I want to work for a leader who makes decisions with me in mind, makes good business. I want them to make good business decisions, but they think about the people. I want to work for someone who's loyal. I want to work for someone who has a heart like that. So how do you tell that story? Because to the point earlier, that's a way to create passion within the business of the team.
And differentiation for the people who are considering the opportunities.
Mm-hmm. I think it can feel very disingenuous if you build it into your marketing plan. We're going to talk about how we love you guys. Put that into the marketing plan.
We're family.
Yeah, we're family.
Oh, I hate that. As soon as I hear that, I'm like,
statement.
Y'all, I worked for a family business. I don't want to go back.
Right.
I'm good.
But, I think just putting their work in and doing the right things. With our team, I know we have evangelists, who will post on their personal social media, like, you wouldn't believe what my boss did for me today. That will happen once in a while. And when that happens, you can't stop the power of that. It drives itself. Yeah. I don't know how you plan for it. I think it's just, you have to put the work in and do the right things and cultivate people and teams and apologize when you mess up.
Yes.
Because you're gonna, as a leader. Mm-hmm. Not me, but other people.
Yeah, not Jason. He's not going to do that. So one of the things that we've spent a lot of time talking about in terms of workforce planning, workforce solutions, for some companies would involve leaning heavily on their internal HR partners or external resources in the absence of that. So I'd love to hear from you. how you feel like that relationship best works, right? So when you think about the people that guide you through these pieces that you didn't set up a business to do,
Mm-hmm.
you didn't set up a business to do the HR side. You didn't set up a business to be a recruiter,
Mm-hmm.
right? You probably haven't thought about your employment brand when you first get started because you have a passion for widgets,
Mm-hmm.
right? So I'd love to hear what advice you'd offer leaders, but also the HR partners or vendors that support them along the way. What does good look like?
Rick, like it's so hard when you work for a visionary. Those people often have attention disorders and they're just all over the place. I'm talking about myself. And then to follow that and try to fulfill that mission, sometimes it's an unclear.
Yeah, but so for transparency, like when I am considering working with a new client, one of the first questions I ask is, who's your HR partner?
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes it's internal, sometimes it's not. If it's not, there's typically a follow-up question, have you considered?
Mm-hmm.
Because in operation, I've yet to have a client project that I've worked on that did not have something that I considered an HR challenge. And
can you give some examples?
I was sitting in a meeting one time with the direct reports of the folks that I was working with, and an individual contributor used the word hostile work environment. You don't just know that term, and it is, to me, that's a trigger term. To me, in my former days when Jamie was my partner, I would have had her phone ringing before I walked out of the room, that this is the word I heard, help me with this.
Mm-hmm.
So that's an example. Hiring the right folks, job descriptions. So it how to structure, training, leadership training. It's all across the board. Like it's the whole HR gamut from the technical piece all the way to strategy that I've seen. And so for those HR partners, especially with the folks that I work with, because you hit the nail on the head, I can point to a visionary in every company that I've worked with. And they're wonderful. Without the visionary, the company wouldn't exist. But if you're going to be the HR partner of a visionary, there's a certain level of, I'm not going to use the word patience, but understanding and awareness that you have to have. So you have to, as an HR partner, or for me, as an operations partner, understand the audience and make sure that you're speaking to the audience rather than saying all the things that you want to say.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Because, I could preach about a lot of things, but I may just say one sentence. And it's the same for the HR partner. Like pick where you're going first. What's the priority? And just have some awareness and understanding of the success that they've experienced so far.
Yeah, and you coach operators often, I think you said earlier. So, I mean, maybe that's a translator for the HR team from the visionary. The visionary's casting, the integrator or the ops person is like, this is what that means for you guys. Don't do it like he explained or she explained.
100%. Like a good operations or integrator, because I think those words are absolutely interchangeable. A good one would be able to do that, would be able to say, okay, the visionary said they wanted X to happen. Well, I know for X to happen,
here's the dependency.
1, 2, and 3 have to occur. So I'm just going to go make sure it occurs. But your HR partner would have to walk along with you in most of those situations.
Yeah. I play that visionary role in our company, and I try to explain it like I have 20 ideas a day, and only one of them is any good. I need somebody to tell me which 19 are bad.
Oh, I bet there's 2 ideas.
I bet at least.
Once in a while, there's 2.
We've known you long enough to know that it's better than just one.
But yeah, I mean, that role is key, because otherwise, if it's a visionary casting straight to the team.
Oh, no. Yeah.
Scary.
Yeah.
Robots are taking over.
Absolutely. And there's the possibility that people just go with all of your ideas. And before you know it, you've got
that's
chaos.
even worse.
You have chaos.
Yeah.
So bring it back to HR, that's okay. The visionary going straight to the team's okay as long as they've hired the right team. Right? That's okay. But I don't know that we're always that intentional especially if the visionary was the one picking the team members. I don't think we're always that intentional.
And if you allow the possibility of loyal opposition and unity of team.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
If you're a visionary and you're listening to this and you're saying, okay, I obviously need somebody, an integrator, how do you coach that person to find that yin and yang type situation?
Oh, the visionary to find it?
Because that's an odd, I mean, that's like matchmaking almost, it seems like.
It is matchmaking. And it's funny because this is bringing me right back to like some of the most rewarding times in my career is when I was matched with the right visionary. And that's both corporate and independently. Like the most fun I've had is when I'm with the right visionary. If I was coaching the visionary, it would be that you've got to have some clarity around something, right? It doesn't have to be everything.
A spark.
Doesn't have to be deep. But, for example, if you only want me to speak to you on Friday mornings at 8:30, then I need to know not to call you on Tuesdays at 2:00 because that's when your thinking time is. Or I'm being like silly with my example, but there's got to be some discussion of expectations, which I think is the part that kind of pulls the visionary out a little bit of their area of comfort. There's got to be a little discussion of expectations. And then on the integrator operations side, for a visionary, I would ask a lot of questions to understand what their risk appetite is. Because if it's not close to the visionary, there's a lot of conflict, a really uncomfortable conflict that can occur, either close or in some way complementary. But if you don't watch that, it can get real uncomfortable real fast.
Yeah. And it's probably an opportunity for human resources and talent leaders to coach up and say, you really need another person to balance you out. Like, let's hire and find that person. I'm going to help you do that. That's a brave thing to do to who you report to. But I think, there are a lot.
That's the gig. The gig is a brave gig.
That is. That's the job. That's what you signed up for, is to help to say, look, like this, you need this role. And oftentimes I bet they would think, do we really need this role? And you're like, you need it, So, yeah. And then writing that job description.
Well, and it depends on how fast you want to execute your vision. You can absolutely do all this on your own.
Yeah.
It's a choice.
I know. Yeah.
Yep.
Right? Absolutely. So, Summer, tell our listeners how they find you.
Absolutely. So I'm super active on LinkedIn. It's the best place to go. Search for Summer Dixon, Dixon, Goldman.
And we'd like to put your website. Is that the best way to reach out to you if there's questions or somebody needs your services? Is that also a good option?
That can be used. LinkedIn's probably faster, but yes, absolutely.
Okay. So just like what we normally do, we put our contact information in the show notes. And if there's anything else that you'd like to share with our listeners, then feel free. You good?
I'm good.
She's good.
Yes.
All right. Well,
awesome
thank you
experience.
for joining us very much, and for your contributions to our conversation about the future of work. What are you going to call him today?
Jimbo, close that file, buddy.
Jimbo.
Thanks for listening to the Workforce Therapy Files. We hope you learned something new, and we're thankful for the time that you spent with us today. If there's a topic you'd like us to discuss, reach out to us. Our contact information's listed in the show notes. Until next time, keep your head up.